On Christmas morning, my sister slammed the door in my face when I brought gifts for her kids. "You're not welcome here. Stay outside," she barked, and Mom warned, "Don't ruin the holiday." I just smiled, snapped a photo of the presents, and headed to my car. 10 minutes later, I removed my name from every bill, account, and service they relied on. By evening, Mom left me a voice message. Can you imagine spending weeks, literally weeks, pouring your heart into finding the perfect Christmas gifts, then driving for almost an hour through a gentle falling snow, only to have your own sister slam the door in your face? And just moments later, your mom chimes in, telling you not to ruin the holiday. Sounds like a bad movie, right? But that was my Christmas morning last year. And what I did next, well, it absolutely changed everything. The drive to Natalie's house that morning, it usually takes about 40 minutes. But that day it felt endless. My head was buzzing, rehearsing all the silly things I'd say to my niece and nephew, Madison and Tyler. Madison was about to turn 10, a big girl, and little Tyler had just lost another tooth, a milestone. I'd even wrapped their presents myself. A festive snowman for Tyler, elegant silver for Madison. My old Honda's backseat was practically bursting with bags from Target, Barnes & Noble, even that fancy toy store downtown that always manages to get me. Little flakes of snow began to dance around 7 a.m., dusting my windshield before the wipers swept them away. Christmas music, a soft, jazzy Silver Bells, played low on the radio. Took me back, to when Dad used to play Sinatra and Mom baked cookies. That was years ago, though, back when holidays actually felt different in our family. Solid, loving. I pulled into Natalie's driveway around 9:30, parking right behind Keith's truck. Their house was a picture-perfect postcard, strung with twinkling white lights, a big festive wreath on the door. Through the living room window, I could see the glow of their Christmas tree, presents piled high beneath it. My hands felt cold as I gathered the gift bags, balancing them carefully as I walked up the steps. My heart was actually a little fluttery with excitement. I rang the doorbell, and I heard footsteps echoing inside. I expected Madison or Tyler, maybe even Mom, with her usual tight smile. But it was Natalie. She opened the door just enough for me to see her face. No warmth, no surprise, just a flat, chilling question. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was colder than the falling snow. I held up the overflowing bags, genuinely confused. "Bringing presents for the kids. I texted you last week, remember? Said I'd be stopping by this morning." Her eyes, usually so expressive, were utterly blank. "You need to leave." She stood there, blocking the doorway, one hand gripping the edge as if to reinforce an invisible barrier. "Natalie, it's Christmas." I drove almost an hour through the snow. My voice was starting to crack. "You're not welcome here. Stay outside." She said it loud enough that I heard Keith from inside, his voice muffled, asking, "Who's at the door?" My stomach plummeted. A cold dread began to spread. Can I at least give these to Madison and Tyler? I spent weeks finding them. Then, the voice of my own mother drifted from the hallway, just behind Natalie. "Don't ruin the holiday." She appeared beside my sister, arms crossed over her cardigan, her expression stern. "We're having a nice morning. Just go home." I stood there, paralyzed, holding bags full of carefully chosen, lovingly wrapped gifts, staring at my mother and sister like they were complete strangers, my own family. And then, from inside, Tyler's laugh. Bright, innocent. Madison was probably already playing with whatever she'd opened, oblivious. They had no idea I was standing just 15 feet away, banished to the porch. Something snapped inside me. Switch flipped. A cold, hard certainty settled deep in my chest. I gently set the bags down on the porch, right there in the snow, pulled out my phone, and I took a photo. The flash reflected off the silver wrapping paper, a stark, almost defiant gleam. "What are you doing?" Natalie's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something. "Panic?" "Documenting," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Then I picked up the bags, turned around, and walked back down the steps. My spine was ramrod straight, my head held high. The snow crunched under my boots, a crisp, final sound. "Drama queen," I heard Mom mutter, just before the door slammed shut. That sound, it wasn't just a door closing. It was a final, echoing punctuation mark on years of disappointment, of feeling invisible, of being used. I loaded the gifts back into my car, started the engine, but I just sat there for a moment. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. My phone was already out. The first call went to Verizon. Yes, I need to remove 2 lines from my family plan. My voice somehow sounded steadier than I felt inside. Natalie Crawford and Madison Crawford. Effective immediately. The representative, bless her, asked if I was sure. Mentioned early termination fees. Confirmed. She processed the request, and while she was doing that, I opened my banking app. Netflix, Hulu, the Spotify family plan, the one Mom, Natalie, and Keith all used. My fingers moved across the screen with mechanical precision, a blur of clicks and confirmations. Mom's car insurance. That was under my policy because I'd gotten her a better rate 3 years ago. I called State Farm, left a detailed message, filled out the online form. When they called back days later, the rep asked if I understood Mom would need to find her own coverage. Oh, I understood perfectly. Natalie's Equinox gym membership. The yoga studio membership I'd gifted her last birthday. The Amazon Prime account they all shared. Switched to a single user plan just for me. And Keith's truck payment. Every single month it came out of my account. His business failed, you know. And I'd been eating that $400 payment for 18 months because family helps family, right? Not anymore. I removed my banking info from the auto loan website, called the company, and made damn sure no future charges would process. The storage unit, the one where they kept all their overflow furniture and decorations. My name was on the lease. I contacted the facility, gave 30 days notice. They had until late January to move everything out or it would be auctioned off. My phone showed 10:17 when I finished. The whole process, the systematic dismantling of my financial entanglement with them, had taken just 47 minutes. Felt like an eternity and a blink all at once. I backed out of the driveway, heading home, past houses decked out in inflatable Santas and lights that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. My apartment was quiet when I got back. I'd moved into this small one-bedroom place in suburban Philly 6 months ago, finally saving enough for a security deposit that didn't wipe out my emergency fund. It was small, but it was mine. No roommates, no drama, no family members who thought my success was their personal ATM. I made a cup of coffee and sat on my couch, staring at my phone. Part of me, the old programmed part, expected calls, texts, angry messages demanding to know why their services weren't working, but the silence stretched for hours. Then, around 4 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed across the screen, but it wasn't a call, it was a voice note. I almost didn't listen. The knot of fear and anger in my stomach tightened, but some morbid curiosity made me press play. The audio was muffled at first, like she'd recorded it by accident, or with the phone in her pocket. Then, her voice came through, chillingly clear, talking to someone else. Told you she'd throw a tantrum. This is exactly why we didn't want her around the kids. She's been acting entitled ever since she got that promotion. Natalie's voice, slightly distant, responded. The look on her face was priceless, like she expected us to roll out a red carpet. She thinks money makes her special. Mom again, sharper now, venomous. Walking around like she's better than us because she has some fancy corporate job. Your father would be ashamed. My hand tightened around the phone until my fingers ached. He died 4 years ago. He never met the person I'd become professionally. Never saw me get promoted. Never saw me close that huge deal that earned me a $20,000 bonus. My throat went dry. Then Natalie's careless laugh. Keith said we should ask her for a loan to cover the new roof. Mom scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. She'll cool off by New Year's and transfer us money like she always does. She can't help herself. It's guilt, I think, trying to make up for moving away and abandoning the family. The recording continued for another minute, discussing whether I'd send a check or a direct transfer, speculating about how much they could reasonably ask for. And then it cut off. I sat there, frozen, until the light outside faded to a deep, bruised purple. The voice note played again and again in my head, every word etched into my memory. Moving away and abandoning the family. She can't help herself. My phone stayed silent until 7:30, and then the text started. Bruh. Natalie, my phone isn't working. Natalie, did you do something to my account? Natalie, call me now. Mom, Natalie says her phone is off. What's going on? Mom, this isn't funny. Fix whatever you did. I uncorked a bottle of wine, poured myself a generous glass, and let the messages pile up, unanswered. By 8 p.m. my phone was ringing constantly. I turned off the sound and left it face down on the coffee table. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and twice as many texts. Most were variations on the same theme. Disbelief, anger, demands that I reverse what I'd done. Keith had apparently tried to pay for groceries with a card linked to my Amazon account and been declined. Mom discovered her car insurance had been cancelled when she tried to verify her coverage online. Around 10 a.m., I finally read through all the messages. Natalie's progression from confusion to outright fury was almost fascinating to watch. Her first text had been almost polite, assuming a technical glitch. By message 15, she was threatening to show up at my apartment and make me fix this mess. Mom's messages took a different approach, cycling between guilt trips about family loyalty and thinly veiled insults about my character. What struck me most, though, neither of them asked why. There was no curiosity about what might have prompted such a drastic response. They'd slammed a door in my face, told me I wasn't welcome, accused me of ruining their holiday by simply existing on their doorstep. Yet somehow, in their minds, I was the unreasonable one for reacting. I blocked their numbers, and then I made myself breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. The kind of quiet, solitary meal I'd learned to appreciate since living alone. By early afternoon, they'd started calling from other numbers. Aunt Lorraine's area code. Then, what must have been Keith's mother's phone. Each time I let it go to voicemail. Each time, the message was some version of, "Call your mother," or "Natalie needs to talk to you right away." The funny thing about setting boundaries is how quickly people escalate when their usual methods stop working. They'd spent years training me to respond immediately, to drop everything and solve whatever crisis they'd manufactured. My silence, it was clearly more disturbing to them than an argument would have been. I spent the afternoon organizing my apartment, a task I'd been putting off for weeks. My closet got a ruthless purge. Kitchen cabinets reorganized. I found expired coupons from 2 years ago stuffed in a drawer, right alongside receipts for purchases I'd made for Natalie's household. A $60 blender for some health kick that lasted 3 weeks. An $80 humidifier for Madison's room when she had a cold. The receipts went straight into the trash. I wasn't keeping score anymore, because the game was officially over. That evening, I ordered Chinese food and watched a movie I'd been meaning to see for months. My phone continued buzzing with calls from unfamiliar numbers, but I just turned off the vibration. The screen would light up silently while I ate my lo mein, trying to focus on the plot. My building's intercom buzzed around 9 p.m. Robert, the doorman's voice, crackled with static. "Ms. Reeves, there's a Natalie Crawford here to see you. Should I send her up?" My chopsticks paused halfway to my mouth. "No, thank you, Robert. Please tell her I'm not available. She's quite insistent, Miss Reeves. Says it's an emergency." "Everything's an emergency with her, Robert," I said, setting down my food. "I'm not available tonight or any other night until further notice. She's not on my approved visitor list." Robert's voice dropped lower, his professional discretion kicking in. "Understood. I'll handle it." I heard muffled voices through the intercom before it went dead. Part of me, the old ingrained part, wanted to look out the window to see if Natalie was making a scene in the lobby. The larger, newer part of me recognized that impulse as old programming, the reflex to manage her emotions, to minimize her embarrassment. I stayed on my couch and pressed play on the movie. She called from the lobby phone. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with a text from Keith's number. "Can you please just talk to her? She's crying in the car." I typed back slowly, deliberately. "She knows where I work. She knows my address. She knows how to reach me. What she wants is for me to fold immediately and restore everything I canceled. I'm not doing that tonight, tomorrow, or next week. When she's ready to have an actual conversation about what happened, she can email me." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. Talk about a power shift, right? If you're still with me on this wild ride, and you want to hear more stories about breaking free from impossible situations, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel, and trust me, there's more to this story. The week between Christmas and New Year's was typically slow at work, but I volunteered to cover our Center City office. My boss seemed grateful, mentioning how young employees never wanted to work during the holidays anymore. I didn't tell her I was hiding. The office felt safer than my apartment, where family members might ambush me in the parking lot or lobby. My desk became a sanctuary. I caught up on filing, reorganized my digital folders, drafted Q1 proposals that didn't even need to be written until mid-January. Anything to keep my mind occupied and my hands busy. Jessica, a colleague, found me there on December 28th, eating a sad desk salad and reviewing expense reports. She knocked on my cubicle wall, even though the space was open. "You're here late," she observed. "Just finishing up some paperwork," I mumbled, not looking up. She pulled up a chair. "Anyway, what's really going on? You've been here past 7 every night this week." "That's not like you." I considered deflecting, offering some vague excuse about year-end deadlines. But Jessica had this uncanny way of seeing through corporate politeness, straight to the truth. "Family stuff," I admitted, the words tasting bitter. "It's just easier to be here than home right now." "The holidays will do that," she said, offering me a bag of pretzels from her desk drawer. "My brother didn't speak to me for 6 months after I refused to loan him money for his third failed startup. He came around eventually, but it was rough." "What made him come around?" I took a pretzel, even though I wasn't hungry. "He grew up," Jessica shrugged. "Realized that being related doesn't mean having unlimited access to my bank account. Some people figure that out. Others just find new people to use." We sat there in comfortable silence for a while. Jessica didn't push for details or offer unwanted advice. She just existed in the space with me, making it feel less lonely. When she finally left around 8, she squeezed my shoulder and mumbled for me to go home and get some sleep. I waited another hour before leaving, just to be safe. New Year's Eve arrived without fanfare. I'd been invited to Jessica's party, but the thought of making small talk and pretending to be festive felt utterly exhausting. Instead, I bought a nice bottle of wine, made pasta from scratch, and watched the countdown on television from my couch. When the ball dropped, I thought about last year. I'd been at Natalie's house, watching Tyler try to stay awake until midnight while Madison practiced violin. Mom had made her famous cheesecake. Keith had told terrible dad jokes. It had felt like family then. Messy, imperfect, but fundamentally solid. But now I knew. I had known then that they were already planning their budget around my contributions for the coming year. That Mom was telling Natalie to ask me for help with the new roof, treating my money like a shared resource. That my presence was tolerated only as long as I remained useful. The apartment felt quiet as the celebration ended, and late-night programming took over. I washed my wine glass and thought about the year ahead. Freedom, I realized, was supposed to feel liberating. But mostly, it just felt heavy, burdened with the weight of relationships that couldn't survive honesty. January brought a cold that settled deep into your bones. The kind of Pennsylvania winter that made you question why anyone chose to live this far north. I bundled up for the commute to work, grateful for heated seats and the blast of warm air from the vents. The first Monday back after the holidays, I found an envelope on my desk. My name was written across the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a card with a generic winter scene. The message read, "Families go through rough patches. The kids miss you. Please reconsider, Keith." I appreciated that he at least acknowledged there was something to reconsider, unlike Natalie's flat-out demands that I simply restore everything and pretend Christmas morning hadn't happened. But Keith's apology didn't erase Natalie's behavior, or Mom's complicity. He was asking me to be the bigger person, to absorb their cruelty and move forward without requiring them to change. The card went into my desk drawer, right next to those old receipts I'd already thrown away. Maybe someday I'd want to remember this period of my life. More likely, I'd purge the drawer during spring cleaning and wonder why I'd kept any of it. Work provided structure, purpose. I closed a major account in mid-January, bringing in enough revenue to make my boss hint about another promotion. The commission check was substantial, enough to cover 3 months of rent with money left over for a vacation. I thought about how that money would have been absorbed by family needs in the past. Natalie's car breaking down, Mom needing dental work, Keith's truck needing new tires. My success would have been measured by how quickly I could solve their problems, rather than what I'd accomplished professionally. The commission cleared on a Friday. I celebrated by booking a trip to Portland, Oregon for February, a place none of my family had connections to, where I could walk around without worrying about running into cousins or family friends who'd want to know why I was avoiding everyone. By late January, the storage unit deadline had passed. Keith sent me a brief email confirming they'd moved everything out on the last possible day. Barely made it, he wrote. Had to rent a U-Haul and cram everything into our garage. Natalie's still furious about the cost, but at least we didn't lose anything. I didn't respond. The storage unit had been one more thing I provided without ever being asked if I wanted the responsibility. Its resolution felt like closing a door that should have been shut years ago. 3 days later, Mom showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole, her finger poised to press the doorbell a second time. I didn't open the door. "I know you're in there." Her voice carried through the walls, tight with barely suppressed rage. "This is childish. We're a family." I turned up the volume on my television and waited. She rang the bell 4 more times before giving up, the silence after she left feeling like a deep breath. The voice note still haunted me during slow moments. I'd replay sections in my head, analyzing the tone, the casual cruelty of discussing me like I was a resource to be managed, rather than a person. "Your father would be ashamed." That line, it cut deeper than any of the others. Dad had worked construction his entire life, coming home with sore muscles and concrete dust in his hair. He'd been so proud when I graduated college, the first in our family to earn a degree. He'd helped me move into my first apartment, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs, despite Mom insisting he'd hurt his back. "You're going places, kid," he'd said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Don't let anyone make you feel bad about it." I wish he'd been more specific about who anyone might include. February brought Valentine's Day and another attempt at contact. This time, Natalie sent a letter to my office. The envelope had my name in her looping handwriting, forwarded through the company mail system. Inside were 2 pages of single-spaced explanation. She was sorry about Christmas morning. Mom had been stressed about money. Keith's hours had been cut. Kids missed me. Could we please talk? The letter never mentioned the voice note. It never acknowledged the years of financial support I'd provided, or the casual expectation that I'd continue indefinitely. It asked me to be the bigger person, to remember that family forgives. I filed it in my desk drawer and didn't respond. March came with warmer weather and news through extended family. Aunt Lorraine, Mom's sister, who had always maintained a careful neutral stance, called to ask if I knew Natalie was looking for a new apartment. Their landlord had increased the rent, and without my monthly contribution, they couldn't afford to stay. "Your mother thinks you're being vindictive," Lorraine said carefully, her voice soft. "But I told her I wanted to hear your side before forming an opinion." So I told her about Christmas morning, the door in my face, the dismissal, the gifts left on the porch. And then I sent her the voice note. Lorraine was quiet for a long time after listening. "I had no idea they'd been that dependent on you financially." "They weren't dependent," I corrected her, the distinction feeling profoundly important. "I was enabling. They planned their life around my income without ever asking if I was willing to be part of that plan." "What do you want to happen now?" she asked gently, without judgment. "I want them to figure out their own finances," I said, my throat tight. "I want to stop being treated like an obligation instead of a person. I want my father's memory to be something other than a weapon they use to manipulate me." Lorraine sighed. "I'll talk to your mother, but you should know she's telling people you cut them off over a misunderstanding, that you're holding a grudge over nothing. Let her tell whatever story makes her feel better," I said. And I meant it. April arrived with cherry blossoms and a promotion, Senior Director of Account Management, with a salary that would have made my family's demands seem like pocket change. I celebrated with Jessica and a few other colleagues, drinking expensive cocktails at a rooftop bar, watching the sunset over the city. The promotion came with additional responsibilities and a team to manage. 3 direct reports who looked to me for guidance and mentorship. I found myself enjoying the leadership role more than I'd expected. Teaching someone else how to navigate difficult clients or structure a proposal gave me purpose beyond hitting quarterly targets. One of my new team members, a recent graduate named Ashley, reminded me so much of myself at 23. Eager, hard-working, perpetually worried she wasn't doing enough. During our first one-on-one meeting, she apologized 3 times for minor mistakes mistakes that barely registered as issues. "You're doing fine," I told her, reviewing her client correspondence. "Better than fine, actually. Your follow-through is excellent. I just don't want to let anyone down." She twisted her pen. "My family sacrificed a lot for me to go to college. I need to make it count." Something in her tone made me pause. "That's a lot of pressure to carry." "It's just how it is," she said matter-of-factly, like the weight was normal. "They helped me, so now I help them. My mom hasn't worked since I was 12. My dad's hours got cut. That's what family does." I thought about that conversation for days afterward. The casual acceptance of obligation as love. The belief that financial support was the only currency that mattered in family relationships. Ashley was at the beginning of a path I'd already walked, and I couldn't tell her where it led without sounding bitter or damaged. Instead, I started modeling different behavior. When she mentioned her brother asking for money to cover rent, I asked questions instead of offering solutions. "How does that impact your budget? Do you have emergency savings left?" Gentle prompts that made her think critically about the pattern. She came to her own conclusions eventually. "I think I need to say no this time," she admitted, looking a little scared, but also determined. "He's not trying very hard to find work, and I can't keep bailing him out every month." "That takes courage," I said, meaning it. "Did you ever have to do something like that?" She looked at me with those earnest 23-year-old eyes. "Set boundaries with family." Pause. "Yes, I did." I didn't elaborate. "It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I don't regret it." The conversation shifted to work topics, but I felt like I'd planted a seed. Maybe Ashley would learn earlier than I did that protecting herself isn't selfish. Maybe she'd avoid years of resentment building while she funded other people's choices. My phone stayed silent. No congratulations, no acknowledgement of my promotion. I hadn't expected any. May brought warmer weather and an unexpected email from Keith. The subject line read, "No expectations, just information." Inside was a brief update about the kids. Madison had joined the debate team and was apparently destroying her competition with logical arguments. Tyler had discovered dinosaurs and wouldn't stop talking about the Cretaceous period. The email ended with, "I know you're not ready to reconnect. I'm not asking you to. Just thought you might want to know they're doing okay." It was the first communication from anyone in my family that didn't include demands or guilt trips. I read it 3 times, searching for hidden agendas or manipulation tactics. Finding none, I sent a short reply. "Thank you for letting me know." Keith wrote back within an hour. "Natalie doesn't know I'm emailing you. She's still angry. Mom is mom. But I figured you deserved to hear about your niece and nephew without all the other baggage." "I appreciate that," I typed. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, it's been rough. Money is tight. Natalie resents having to work full-time, but we're managing. I think this was necessary, even if she won't admit it yet." I stared at his response for a long time before replying. "I never wanted to hurt the kids. That was never the goal." "I know," he wrote back immediately. "And someday they'll be old enough to understand why you had to step back. Right now, they just know Morgan isn't around anymore. But that's on their mother, not you." The email exchange continued sporadically over the following weeks. Keith would send updates about school events or funny things Tyler said. I'd respond with questions or brief acknowledgements. We maintained careful boundaries, never discussing the larger family conflict or speculating about future reconciliation. Through these updates, I learned that Natalie had taken a job at an insurance company doing claims processing. Before Christmas, she'd been working part-time at a boutique, something that barely covered her personal expenses while I subsidized the household. She hated the full-time work, according to Keith, but the benefits were good and the pay was steady. Mom had moved in with them temporarily to save money on her rent, which was apparently creating new tensions in the household. "Your mother and Natalie are too much alike," Keith wrote in early June. "Neither one wants to admit they were wrong about how they treated you. So instead, they've built this narrative where you're the villain who abandoned the family over a minor disagreement. Is that what you think happened?" "Yes, a minor disagreement." "Hell no," he replied. "They slammed the door in your face on Christmas morning and then talked about you like an ATM." That voice note Natalie sent was eye eye-opening. I just never realized how bad it was until everything fell apart. I saved his emails in a folder labeled Keith. Maybe having one family member who understood the reality was worth something. Or maybe I was just desperate for any connection to the people I'd once considered my immediate family. June also brought my trip to the coast. A long weekend in a rental house overlooking the ocean. I'd invited Jessica and 2 other friends from work. We spent 3 days eating seafood, playing board games, and watching sunsets that painted the sky in impossible colors. On the last night, we sat around a fire pit on the deck. Jessica was telling a story about her disastrous first apartment when she turned to me. "You seem different lately. Lighter somehow." Lighter. I wasn't sure what she meant. Like, you're not carrying something heavy anymore. She poked the fire with a stick. "When I first met you 2 years ago, you always seemed stressed, always checking your phone, worried about something. Now you're just here." The observation caught me off guard. I hadn't realized how much of my mental energy had been consumed by managing family expectations. Even before Christmas morning, I'd been perpetually braced for the next crisis or request. The subconscious tension of waiting for someone to need something. "I cut off my family," I said quietly. The words felt strange to speak aloud to friends. Or they cut me off. Depends on who's telling the story. Jessica didn't look surprised. I figured it was something like that. "You want to talk about it." So I did. The whole story spilled out while the fire crackled and the ocean whispered against the shore below. Christmas morning, the voice note, the systematic dismantling of financial support. My friends listened without judgment, asking occasional questions, but mostly just witnessing. "Do you think you'll ever reconcile?" someone asked when I finished. "I don't know." It was the most honest answer I had. I think reconciliation would require them to acknowledge what actually happened, to take responsibility for how they treated me. I'm not sure they're capable of that. What would you need from them? Jessica's question was gentle but direct. If they showed up tomorrow wanting to fix things, what would it take? I thought about it while the fire died down to embers. A real apology. Not "I'm sorry you're upset," but "I'm sorry for what I did." Acknowledgement that they saw me as a resource rather than a person. Proof that they've made changes and aren't just coming back because they need money again. "That's a high bar," Jessica observed. "It should be," I said, pulling my jacket tighter against the ocean breeze. "The alternative is going back to a relationship where I'm valued for what I provide instead of who I am. I'd rather be alone than return to that." The conversation drifted to other topics. But the confession had lifted something. I'd spoken the truth aloud to people who cared about me, and they hadn't told me I was being dramatic or vindictive. They just accepted that sometimes cutting off family is the healthiest choice you can make. Summer meant long days and weekend trips to the beach with friends I'd made outside the family circle. People who asked about my life without calculating how my success could benefit them. I learned to paddleboard and got a sunburn across my shoulders that peeled for a week. In August, Madison turned 11. I thought about her all day, wondering if she remembered the aunt who used to take her to the Children's Museum and buy her books about mythology. Tyler would be 7 by now, probably playing soccer or baseball, assuming his birthday had already passed. I never know. September brought cooler weather and an unexpected encounter. I was leaving the grocery store when I saw Keith loading bags into his truck. He spotted me at the same moment, his expression shifting through several emotions before settling on something like genuine embarrassment. "Hey!" He closed the truck bed and walked over. "Been a while." 8 months, I confirmed, holding my ground, paper bags balanced against my hip. "Look about Christmas." He rubbed the back of his neck. "That was messed up. I tried to tell Natalie she was being unreasonable, but your mom got in her head about it." "Why are you telling me this?" I genuinely wanted to know. "Because I'm tired of watching my wife stress about money while refusing to admit why we're in this situation." He looked utterly exhausted. "She thought you'd always be there to catch us. She planned our budget around your help without considering what would happen if you stopped giving it. And now," I shifted the bags to my other hip. "Now we're figuring it out," he shrugged, a weary sort of honesty in his eyes. I got a second job doing night security. Natalie's working at a call center. The kids are in public school instead of that private academy your mom insisted on. He paused. It's harder, but at least it's honest. I didn't know what to say to that. Keith had always been peripheral to the family drama, married to my sister, but somehow separate from her worst impulses. For what it's worth, he continued, his gaze steady, I listened to that voice note Natalie accidentally sent you. Made me realize how she really saw you. He glanced back at his truck. I should go, but I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're the villain here. He walked away before I could respond. I drove home with his words circling in my head, trying to decide if his apology changed anything. Didn't. I realized Keith's awareness of the problem didn't erase the years of being treated like a financial resource rather than a sister and daughter. October meant Halloween and memories of taking Madison trick-or-treating when she was Tyler's age. She dressed as a princess, her costume carefully selected from the clearance rack at Party City because Natalie said spending full price was wasteful. I'd bought her the crown she really wanted, the expensive one with fake gems that caught the light. I wondered if she still had it. November arrived with early snow and another letter, this time from Mom. The envelope was addressed in shaky handwriting, her cursive, less steady than I remembered. Inside was a single page. I'm sorry for what I said on that recording. I was angry and said things I didn't mean. You're my daughter and I love you. Please come home for Thanksgiving. The letter felt hollow. An apology built on the expectation of immediate reconciliation without genuine change. There was no acknowledgement of the years of taking my support for granted. No recognition of how Christmas morning had revealed their true feelings. Just a plea to return to the status quo, where I bankroll their lives and received criticism in exchange. I didn't respond. Thanksgiving came and went. I volunteered at a homeless shelter, serving turkey and mashed potatoes to people who thanked me like the meal was a gift rather than an obligation. It felt better than any family dinner I could remember. December meant Christmas was approaching again. 1 full year since the morning that changed everything. I bought presents for Jessica's kids and donated to the toy drive at work. My apartment had a small tree with white lights, simple and peaceful. On Christmas Eve, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but some deep, quiet instinct made me pick up. Hello. It's Tyler. His voice was higher than I remembered. Still a little boy. Grandma gave me her phone. My heart stopped. Hey buddy. How are you? I miss you. He said it simply without drama. Madison said you don't come around anymore because Mom was mean to you. I closed my eyes, a raw ache spreading through my chest. It's complicated, buddy. Grandma says you're punishing us, but Dad says you're just taking care of yourself. He paused, a child's confusion palpable. I don't really understand. I just wish you could come to Christmas again. I wish things were different too, my voice cracked slightly. But sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that are hard to fix. Will you ever come back? He sounded so small. I don't know, Tyler. Maybe someday. I didn't want to lie to him, but I couldn't promise something I wasn't sure of. But even if I can't visit right now, I still think about you and your sister all the time. Okay. He accepted it with the heartbreaking resilience of childhood. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, buddy. The call ended. I sat on my couch for a long time, tears silently streaming down my face, crying for the nephew I'd lost access to, and the niece who probably thought I'd abandoned her. The collateral damage of protecting myself from people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted. But even then, amidst the ache, I didn't regret my choice. The alternative was returning to a dynamic where my worth was measured in dollars transferred and bills paid. Where my presence at family gatherings was tolerated rather than welcomed. Where my father's memory was weaponized to guilt me into compliance. January brought a new year and a fresh start. I signed up for pottery classes and joined a book club. My life expanded in directions that had nothing to do with obligation or family expectation. I made friends who knew me as Morgan, The woman who laughed too loud at jokes and always ordered dessert. Not Morgan, the sister who paid for everything. Not Morgan, the daughter who was supposed to sacrifice herself for family unity. The voice note still lived on my phone, tucked away in a folder I rarely opened. Sometimes I wondered if I should delete it, remove the evidence of that casual cruelty. But it served as a stark reminder of why boundaries matter. Why protecting yourself isn't selfish, even when people you love call it punishment. Spring arrived with rain and blooming flowers. I got a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Natalie messaging from a new phone. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for an hour before responding. "About what?" "About fixing this. About being a family again." "We can talk," I typed back. "But fixing it means acknowledging what broke it. Are you ready for that conversation?" The typing indicator appeared and disappeared 3 times before her response came through. "I don't know." At least she was honest. "Let me know when you figure it out," I replied. She didn't message again. Summer meant a year and a half had passed since Christmas morning. I'd built a life that didn't revolve around managing other people's crises or funding their lifestyle choices. The guilt still surfaced occasionally, usually late at night when I was tired and vulnerable to old patterns of thinking. But mostly I felt free. Free from the expectation that my success was communal property. Free from the resentment that built each time I transferred money to people who considered it their due. Free from the insidious voice in my head that sounded like Mom, telling me I was abandoning the family by choosing myself. Dad would understand. And I decided the man who'd carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs and told me to go places wouldn't want me stuck in a cycle of being used by people who were supposed to love me. I didn't know if Natalie would ever be ready for the conversation that might rebuild our relationship. I didn't know if Mom would ever apologize without expecting immediate forgiveness and restoration of my financial support. I didn't know if Madison and Tyler would grow up resenting me, or eventually understand why I'd walked away. What I knew was this. The woman who'd driven to her sister's house on Christmas morning with bags full of gifts wouldn't have survived another year of that treatment. The door slammed in my face. That was the last permission I needed to stop setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. I still had that photo I'd taken on the porch that morning. Gifts, wrapped in silver and snowman paper, sitting in fresh snow while my family celebrated inside without me. It lived in my phone's album, labeled Proof. A stark, silent reminder that sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you show you exactly who they are when you're no longer useful to them. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is believe them the first time. And just walk away. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to face something like this with your own family? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.